Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back. All right, I'm just letting some more people in from the waiting room, and we'll get started here in just a moment. Hi, everyone. Hi, people who are just joining. Welcome. So good to see you all. Oh my goodness, it's been too long. Okay, we're going to dive right in because we have a full agenda today, and we will just let people join in and pop in as they will. But welcome back, everyone. Hi, it's so good to see you. We're so glad you're here. We've been really eager to reconnect with everyone and are so glad to do it in the context of spring and getting gardens ready and a lot of, new developments and exciting things in the upcoming months. So thanks for joining in on this workshop. For those of you who are new to Big Green, welcome to you as well. We are a nonprofit organization that supports gardens at schools. In today's workshop, we're going to cover a lot of skills and things for spring planting, as well as we're going to highlight some of our online resources and things you can use in your remote classroom. I did want to let y'all know that we are recording this presentation, so if you don't want your video on that recording, feel free to turn off your video. That being said, if you do want to have your video on and that makes you feel more connected, we definitely welcome you to do so. We will be monitoring the chat throughout this presentation, so if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in there. Also, feel free to use that space as an introduction to the other folks on this call. We will have some time at the end for both questions and discussion. And to that point, we'll be doing a few different sections of this workshop. So we'll pause for questions throughout, but if you have big, longer questions, we might be putting those on the list to address at the end. So don't worry if your question isn't getting addressed. We might just be saving that for the end. And I think that is all our housekeeping things. Welcome to people who are just joining. We're going to go ahead and dive in with a little icebreaker activity. So we're going to do, well, first I'll introduce y'all to our team. So my name is Catherine Jernigan. I'm a program coordinator with Big Green. And today on the call, we also have Amina, who is also a program coordinator, and Sam, who is our fearless manager. And then we also have on our team Laura, who you may not have met before, but she works on the development team. So this is our current Big Green Chicago team. And we're going to kick it off with an icebreaker activity that is kind of a variation on one of our lessons called the Roots and Fruits activity. So this is an activity we encourage folks to do with students. And we did it at a workshop in person if you attended that. But basically, it's to get you thinking about where your food roots are. So what keeps you grounded and rooted? And then things that are fruits, what are you looking forward to? So usually when we do this with students, it would be food focused. But given the current circumstances, we want to pose the question with the roots being, thinking through the past year, thinking about everything that's happened. What is something that's been keeping you grounded and steady? And then for fruits, as it's spring, as the weather's starting to get a little warmer, what is something you're looking forward to? So given the virtual format, we're going to do this in a Google Jamboard. And I see if people are joining in. So what I'm going to ask you to do is there's 2 pages on this Jamboard. One is roots and one is fruits. And I would like you to choose a sticky note. It's this little icon here. And you can change the color if you like and type in one thing that is something that's grounding you during this year. And then one thing that is a fruit, so something you're looking forward to. And I'll give folks a moment to
Catherine
think
or
through and do
Amina,
that.
can one of you please switch it to make it publicly accessible? Right now it is.
Yes, I will do that right now. Sorry about that. Make you all editors. So you may need to refresh your screen.
And I think
hopefully that will work.
paste the new link into the chat, please.
Okay. It should be the same link.
Got it. It's working. Thank you.
For folks who are just joining, I'm going to share the link to this Jamboard in the chat. And we are just doing a little icebreaker about what has been grounding you during this time, and what are you looking forward to? I'm seeing so many great answers. For folks who might be joining on the phone, I'll read a few in just a minute. I'll give folks a little more time to answer. So I'm seeing things I'll just read a few of the roots, the things that are grounding folks. I'm seeing lots of family and friends, a newfound joy of baking, family, friends, my garden, going for walks, camping, reading, my students, even remotely, Netflix, getting out to nature, the lake, parks, my community garden plot, my nieces and nephew, family, my job, cooking, focusing on wellness, learning to play guitar and learning that cucumbers climb onto anything around them. Very inspiring to watch them grow. I love it. Some more walks, cooking, growing carrots, onions, and radish in a see-through container. I love that. Helpful coworkers, listening to audiobooks. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for contributing. That's the grounding one. And so things folks are looking forward to: being able to take students outside, seeing a full classroom once again, better weather, going out with friends, vacation, family, near or far, getting our school gardens up and running, reconnecting, looking forward to having students work in the garden again, looking forward to life back in the garden. It has been sad lately. I just want to put my hands in the dirt. I hear that. Time without a mask. Teaching my students the intentionality of gardening and enjoying seeing growth and development in front of them. Yes, these are all amazing. I'm seeing so many more come in. Feel free to continue contributing to that. This is wonderful. And yeah, just to call it back to the lesson I mentioned, if you are interested in doing this with your students, you can adapt it, virtually. You can do this in person in the future. We've done it in the past with like a big board with a tree on it and have people put sticky notes on it. And it's just really a conversation starter and can get students thinking about their food memories, what roots them. Maybe it's certain meals they've had with family, maybe it's certain cultural foods, and then fruits. It can be like goals that you want to do with your garden, things your class wants to do together. Just a really good activity to get people to share a little bit about what they're thinking and also have conversation. But I'm really feeling the energy. I love that people are looking forward to reconnecting both with their students and with their garden space. And so on that note, I'll pass it over to Sam, who's going to talk through some spring garden planning resources.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Let me just adjust my my view. Okay, so let's start talking about spring, because here we are. So this first slide helps to kind of outline what crops we're going to be planting, most likely to be planting this spring. We've included a few that normally we don't have in our seed distributions, and everybody's getting the same seeds. But as we've emailed out, and as we'll talk about later, this year everybody has the option to select what seeds you'd like to grow. There's going to be a lot more independent gardening in school gardens this year than Big Green has ever kind of expected. So I included some things that are a little bit outside of what traditionally we've distributed or what you all might be used to. So the seeds for broadcasting this spring, we're talking about lettuce when you want to be growing a dense bed full of lettuce, of spinach, of peas, arugula, kale, mustard greens. Those are all great crops to plant densely, to have that really thick growth that's going to suppress weeds and going to produce a huge harvest of young, tender leaves in the spring, things that are going to grow quickly, that you'll then be able to plan to harvest before turning the garden into transitioning to those warm weather crops for summertime in May and June. The seeds that you want to think about spacing out more evenly are the things that are going to require more room to grow. So those are all the root crops. I should have put beets on here, but I didn't. I'm going to add them right now. So the root crops like turnips, radishes. Oh, I did put beets, Swiss chard and beets. I put them together. They're cousins, they're sisters. Potatoes, it's too early in the spring to plant sweet potatoes, but any white potatoes, red potatoes, things like that. Now is a great time to plant them. Kale, collard greens. Kale is on both sides, and actually lettuce, spinach, most of these that you were broadcasting, you could plant and space out individually in the garden as well. It just, you just would be giving them more space to grow and to be expecting them to grow a bit longer before you harvested. Kale, collard greens, mustard greens, cabbage. And when I say cabbage, I really mean the whole cabbage family. So thinking about the collard greens and kale as part of that cabbage family, also thinking of pak choy, Napa cabbage, the different variations of cabbage and mustard green that are so common in Asian cuisine, and all of the different variations that exist there. I did not put broccoli and cauliflower on this list, specifically because when we transition to the next slide, we will see a calendar that talks about when things need to be started indoors and when those things would be transplanted outdoors. Broccoli and cauliflower have a tendency, once we start to get into warm weather, to bolt, for those flower buds that are the cauliflower and broccoli that we eat, to open up and turn into flowers and start the reproduction process in full. And so there likely would not be enough time to start broccoli and cauliflower in the garden directly from seed right now and have the plant be mature and full enough and ready to reproduce. Likely that would have been a plant you would have wanted to have started about 4 weeks ago. So if you would like to plant broccoli cabbage, cauliflower, and you have not started those seeds already, just try to buy a couple of seedlings somewhere from one of our early spring sales, and we're going to talk about where those are available in an upcoming slide, and that'll help to make sure you get a harvest. And the other thing with those crops that is frequently mentioned is they tend to do better in the fall, because instead of the weather getting warmer and the plants bolting, if you get them started in September and August or September, then as the days get shorter and colder, the plants are like, okay, cool, I'm just going to keep these buds closed until the weather warms up / they get harvested. So those, a lot of gardeners recommend that those are easier to grow in the fall. So apart from those, I've been hearing a lot of questions about, is it too late to start things? I've been noticing on message boards, is it too late to start tomatoes inside? It is not. You all should be aware that we have, as we have in the past, purchased seedlings, and we will have a distribution of plants later this year, which will include things like peppers and tomatoes, those warm weather crops that we typically do, the greens for the summer, the herbs for the summer. Those will all be communicated out and distributed. But if you would like to start them indoors, it is not too late. You can kind of see here, we've highlighted March 24th is about, this is about in this timeline where we are now. Everything that has a gray line to the right of it on this chart is perfectly great to start both inside and then transplant outside once we pass May 15th and the weather is in earnest warmer. The risk of frost diminishes. We can go on to our next slide. So now this is kind of taking some of that information and just putting it on a calendar, thinking about when you would want to start plants indoors for mature transplants to go into the garden after May 15th. This next slide is talking about when you would want to start things indoor for smaller, more immature transplants. So there's a really wide range of when you can start things indoors and have them be ready to transplant outdoors and still have them grow. The beautiful thing about the cold weather crops that we discussed on that first slide, the things like lettuce and spinach and peas, is those are things we don't have to worry about starting inside at all. Those are things that next week when we start distributing our seeds, and again, we're going to get into that a little bit. Once you come back from spring break, you can start getting those seeds directly into the soil, and they're going to germinate just fine as soon as they have the right moisture and temperatures and the conditions are right. They'll start growing and you'll be in good shape for a harvest as you typically would before students leave school in June. So the one other thing on this one slide before we move on that I want to point out is there's this week here at the end of April, at the beginning of June, that we say hardening off. One of the most important things, and something that I've observed a number of times not go well, both in my own garden and in some school garden work that we've done, is when hardening off isn't done well, it can undo all of the hard work you've done to get your indoor plants in great shape for transplanting outside. So hardening off is the process that plants go through to adjust and transition from the indoor climate that they've been growing in to the outdoor climate. So they have to adjust to the much more intense radiation coming from the sun. And they also have to adjust to the wind. So it's very easy for tender leaves when they're growing inside and they don't have the wind and the bright sun to be open, to really be transpiring quite freely. So pulling out moisture from the soil, releasing carbon dioxide and moisture out of their leaves. They don't have to cool themselves off as much. They don't have to protect the moisture inside of them as much. But as soon as we move them outside and they're in the sun, they have to worry about that solar radiation. They can get sunburned. And they also have to be concerned about drying out and desiccating. So more moisture can leave the plant then they're able to uptake from their roots. And so leaves can wilt, and leaves can get burned. So you have to help them get used to that. And so if any plants are being started inside, I would recommend spending at least 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, gently getting them used to outdoor conditions. So in my own garden, that means starting when I first bring them outside, I try to pick a cloudy day to bring them outside. I move them into a space that's a little bit sheltered from the wind. And usually I only give them about 4 to 6 hours of outside time for the first couple days. And then as that week progresses, I move them more towards, gradually move them towards conditions that would be more similar to when they were planted in the ground. So I put them in full sun. I move them to where they're less sheltered from the wind. I increase the amount of time that they're outside. And I also pay attention to the weather. If it's going to be extremely windy, maybe I won't put them out that day. If it's going to be super warm and really sunny and bright, I'll make sure that they're in a space that's shaded. Or maybe, again, I won't put them out that day, or I'll wait until the evening to put them out, or kind of balance, knowing that there's this pressure on the plant to transition. I want them to be exposed to those conditions, but I want them to be exposed to those conditions cautiously. One other thing I'd like to draw everybody's attention to, Catherine, could you go back to slide 7? The plants in the cucurbit family, so like the summer squash, the zucchinis, the cucumbers, the melons, all of those crops that typically have vines, if you wanted to grow pumpkin or any of the winter squash, all of those are can be treated the same. You'll notice that they have a very short, really 1 week, 2 week at the most window of when you would want to start them inside and transplant them outside. Those are plants that have very sensitive roots and hate to have their roots disturbed. So you can give them an extra head start by giving them like a 1 week or 2 week start inside, but that requires you to then be extra cautious when handling those plants, when taking them out of their container and putting them into the soil. It also means that you don't want their roots to really become root bound at all. Once their roots start to circle around a container and you transplant them, it really shocks them when you start moving them into the soil. So those are crops that, for me, myself, I don't even bother starting them inside. I just wait till the soil is warm. I put them in the ground, and they tend to do really well for me in those conditions. And again, if you do want to give them a head start and start them inside, just be quick about it. Don't let them linger in their containers before they get into the ground. Okay, we are now ready to start talking about our seed distribution. So I'm going to copy a link here and just add it into the chat for you all. Many of you have already completed this form. Thanks to you all who have. As I mentioned earlier, we are doing our seed distribution differently than we ever have this year. We don't have our typical donation from Johnny's Selected Seeds. They have been overwhelmed, like most seed companies, with just incredible interest in people joining this gardening movement, people excited to grow their own food, people excited to take control over their own access to fresh food, what they want to be putting in their bodies, to be spending more time out in nature, all of the amazing things that we know gardening does. And so I'm very excited that there's this rush of people to garden, but that also means that the seed companies who help us to do that are also overwhelmed. And they're also working under kind of slower timelines because of the pandemic. So we have not yet been able to receive that donation from Johnny's, and we have been sourcing seeds from as many different places as we can, and have put together an order form for you all. So we're fulfilling these orders on a first come, first served basis. So far, about 70 schools have submitted orders. Please double check with everybody on your team who is gardening at your school before submitting an order, so that your school can submit one full order. And we're not having to sort through multiple orders for each school. Also, please think about how much space you have in the garden. one thing we've noticed is there's a handful of orders, and we haven't not filled them, but we noticed there's a handful of orders where people will select, I'm growing everything in the garden, but likely you're only putting 1 or 2 plants of those things in the garden if you can even fit all of those things. So be mindful of a little bit of planning before you go ahead and select seeds. And I say that too because we want to make sure there's enough seeds to go around for everybody. And so prioritizing what you would really like to be growing this year is going to help us make sure that we can get everybody the seeds that they need. Also, a little asterisk here, a little aside, is we will be getting more seeds throughout the summer season. And so really just be thinking about what you're going to need for spring and early summer plantings. When we're getting into late summer and fall, we're expecting to get another significantly sized donation of seeds. And so you don't have to be thinking ahead, like, do I need seeds for the fall for my students? Those will be coming from Big Green. So if you have not yet submitted your order, the link is in the chat. Amina and I will be filling those orders over the course of the week. Big shout out to Amina for her hard work on making this happen for y'all. And then next week during spring break, we're going to be putting out sealed totes with paper bags that have your school name stapled on them. And it will be self-serve at each location. At the south side, we're doing our distribution at St. Sabina at Stein Learning Gardens there. You will see when you pull up at that location, there's a parking lot and a greenhouse and their entire learning garden raised beds. You'll see a bin there. It will be labeled Big Green, and all of those seeds will be in there. You can grab what you need, make sure you're taking the bag that's labeled for your school, seal the box back up, and you're good to go. The west side distribution will be at the farm on Ogden, which is the indoor farm and market run by Chicago Botanic Gardens. I'm so excited that everybody who's picking up there will get to see the farm on Ogden, support them, and maybe buy some veggies while you're there. But the bin there will be at the counter, so you can ask them during store hours. Tell them you're from Big Green and you're here to pick up seeds, and they'll give you the bin for you to take your seeds out. And then the north side location will just be my home. So if you're coming to that location, I will have the bin up on my front porch. Come on up, take your seeds out, and you're good to go. If you're curious about my garden, you're welcome to take a peek into my backyard. There's no gate or anything. You could just walk up the side. I don't mind. It might be nice to say hi if I'm around. So that is our seed distribution. We also will be distributing seedlings, as I mentioned earlier again, and we'll follow up with that exact list so you all know how to plan. And as I pass it off, I can go back and start answering some of the questions in the chat as well. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Sam. So as
Oh, sorry, that slide is mine. So yeah, so in addition to the seeds that we're distributing, and we're going to follow up with a blog post and an email as well, but these are the main sources in Chicago that are on our radars of where you can get additional seeds. Some of them are free for schools, some of them are open for donations, some of them are for purchase. And so we'll be able to provide links to all of these as we're doing our follow-ups as well. And they're also easily searchable on Google to find the seeds that you need if Big Green isn't able to provide them this year. All right, thanks so much, everybody.
Awesome. And I see there are some lingering questions in the chat. So Sam's going to get to those. And if we don't respond in the chat, we will save some time at the end for questions too. So I'm going to briefly go over some tips for indoor seedling care. A lot of folks enjoyed growing indoors last year and in the fall. You may have even received a grow kit, or some of your remote students got grow kits through a partnership we did. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about growing things indoors. I'm only going to scratch the surface. There's a lot you can go into on this. So just know that if you have more questions about growing indoors, you can always reach out to us via email. And we're also going to link a really great handout with a lot of information about setting up an indoor growing place in your house, if that's something you're interested in, or in your classroom, or wherever you like indoors. And I saw our Gonzalez team was mentioning in the chat their greenhouse. That's amazing. I love it. I hope y'all get that going this year. A few schools have greenhouses too. But if you do want to grow indoors, the main thing you want to consider is light. So while you can just use natural light, like put your pot by a window or something like that, seeds and seedlings are going to be a lot more successful if you do incorporate some artificial light. And this is mostly because of the length of day. So a lot of plants need between 12 and 16 hours of light for optimum growth. So if you're able to add some sort of lighting, you can really boost what you're capable of growing inside. So when it comes to choosing lights, we have on the left here just some really simple light bulbs. And this is actually a classroom that's comparing different kinds of lights. So, there's like incandescent bulbs, there's LED bulbs, there's fluorescent bulbs. So there's a lot of options out there. The ones that are best for growing indoors are LED or fluorescent. And then when it comes to cost effectiveness, LED lights are your best bet. They're a little bit more pricey up front, but they tend to last a lot longer. So again, you're aiming to get 12 to 16 hours of light. So whether that means going on and switching on your light, or you can even purchase a timer for your indoor growing setup. So on this slide, you have the bulb light with just classic bulbs on the left. And then the picture in the middle is actually a rack set up with tube lighting. That's a really good way to go if you want to grow a lot of seedlings. And Sam, that's what you have at your house, correct? Something more intense like that.
Yeah, I have a shelving unit like that.
Awesome. And on our handout, we even list where you can buy shelving materials if you are interested in doing something like that. But if you just want to dip your toe in, or maybe you have a grow bag or like one plant that you'd like to grow, you can always do the one on the left with just one bulb and one of those metal fixtures. And then you can also do like these string lights that are in the bottom right-hand corner, or Amazon has some fun like little spready ones. It's almost like a strand with a bunch of arms coming off of it. Those can be fun to experiment with too. I see a lot of teachers use those in their classroom. But the thing to keep in mind is LED is the way to go if you're looking for cost effective in the long term. And then the other thing to consider when starting indoors is water. So when you're starting seeds, as you know from starting them in your garden, they want to be consistently wet while they germinate. So you want it to be your soil medium to be the consistency of a wet sponge, a damp sponge. So like almost like a wrung out sponge. You don't want it to be sopping wet, because that can actually lead to root rot or damping off. But you do want it to be consistently wet while those seeds are sprouting. So a lot of folks like to mist from the top. So you're not overwatering, but just keeping things consistently moist. This image in the bottom right corner, there are some seedling trays where you can add water to the bottom. So once your seed has sprouted and you have some small roots, they can get water, directly from the bottom. There's a lot of great trays and things you can purchase and DIYs for doing that. And then of course you can always just like create an upcycled watering can by poking a few holes in a water bottle or a milk jug. That can be a great activity for students to water from the top. And again, you just want to look for overwatering, or if the soil is sopping wet. or if those roots are starting to rot. That's what we want to avoid, as well as also the alternative of it being too dry and drying out. And then the last thing you want to consider is temperature. So seeds are going to want more warmer temperatures, so 70s and 80s. And it may not be that temperature in your basement or wherever you're wanting to start your seeds. So there you can get little seedling heat mats as well for pretty inexpensive. So we linked that in the handout as well. I didn't put it on here, but that's the other factor to consider. So you want to consider the light, you want to consider water, and you want to consider temperature. And again, I know there's a lot of information here, so if you are interested in this, feel free to reach out via email for more information. But we will be sending you all the one pager with like all the information with links of where to buy things if you're interested and that kind of thing. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Amina to go over one of our online lessons.
Great, thank you, Catherine. So while we understand that many of y'all have, in fact, ordered seeds and you're getting ready to pick those up next week, and we understand with that students may not be in learning gardens for a while. So in the meantime, Big Green at Home activities are a great way to kind of ensure that students remain connected to the learning garden. So all of these activities are available at our Big Green at Home website. These activities can really vary from super short and brief to more extensive activities that are connected to standards and curriculum. So today we're going to be walking through one of these activities all together. It is our food origins lesson. And this Big Green at Home lesson is one of my favorites, especially during this time of the season, given that it really allows students to assist in the garden planning process and determine what fruits and vegetables would be more well-suited in growing in the learning garden. So as you can see, the main question that is asked in this activity is where do the fruits and vegetables that we consume, that we eat, come from? Where do they originate from? So we understand that many of these fruits and vegetables that you see are normally found in the grocery store, and well before that came from a garden or a farm. But those plants, those seeds originate and come from some part of the world. So this activity is a great way in exploring that lesson. So when you click on the lesson or make your way to Big Green at Home and find this food origins lesson, you're able to see that the standards that are in fact outlined, and then all of the supplies and the prep that comes with this activity. So this activity comes with a worksheet, it comes with a world map, there's the food origins map, and then an interactive map that you're able to explore with your students. So if we go ahead and click on the food origins map, all right, we are able to see this lovely illustration of the world with smaller illustrations added on top of different fruits and vegetables that we may know. And then on the very bottom of the map, you can see the associated fruits and vegetables with each of those images. So students are able to kind of work through the map and decipher what each image is associated with. So looking at this map, you can see all the different fruits and vegetables dispersed throughout the world. And let's take a look at one of the images in North America, blueberries. So we can see that blueberries did in fact originate in North America, specifically in the region of the Southeast US or Northeast US and southern central Canada. That is in fact where blueberries did originate from. We can also take a look at this map and find that some fruits and vegetables exist in multiple areas of the world. So like looking at the image of an apple, we find that it's found in Southeastern Europe, in Central Asia, in Eastern Asia. So it did in fact originate in Eastern Asia, closer to the current region of China. And we find that currently China actually produces about 48% of apples all around the world. So this tool is super nifty in even exploring fruits and vegetables that were available and present before domestication. So before that they were even cultivated. So looking at the image of watermelons, so that image can be found in Southern Africa. And if you explore resources, some resources actually conflict and say that watermelon originated in the South African region or in East Africa. So that means closer to Ethiopia. And when it was in its original form, it looked very different than what the watermelon that we know of today. But as it slowly made its way up into Northern Africa, so close to Egypt, we find that as it proceeded in its cultivation process and domestication, it slowly evolved, and we can see that the watermelon is to its current form as we know it. So I want us to take a pause from this map for a moment, and I want us to make our way into the chat, and we're going to explore 2 questions associated with this activity. So when students are making their way through this activity, we first start off by asking them 2 main questions. What is a meal that you ate? So what is a meal that you ate? It could be that day or the previous day. And then what is a fruit or vegetable that you ate? So this can be 2 separate questions, or it could be actually 1. So if a student is responding, I ate a sandwich with an apple, right? Whole fruits and vegetables are kind of easier to reach that question. But if students are responding with, I ate pizza, for instance, they're going to have to work a little bit more harder to trace back to those fruits and vegetables. So with older students, that process can be a bit easier. With older students, really working backwards to realize that from pizza is tomato sauce, and from tomato sauce is tomatoes. With your younger students, you're going to have to work a little bit more to kind of build in those steps so that they reach that same point. So if we can work to populate in the chat the responses for those 2 questions, your responses. So what is a meal that you ate? And what is a fruit or vegetable that you recently ate? So it could be pizza, ... tomato. It could be broccoli cheddar soup, ... broccoli. So answer those 2 questions as you will. So I'm going to give you some time to go ahead and start responding in the chat. right, so a lot of great entries are coming through. We've got proteins shake, spinach and banana. There's chili, hot peppers, tomatoes, and beans. There's avocado and green onions, chicken tacos, red and yellow peppers. There's California rolls, avocado. A lot of great things. So a lot of these fruits and vegetables that folks have indicated in the chat can in fact be found in this food origins map. Clementines, English muffin, hard-boiled eggs, wheat. Ooh, wheat is a great one. All right, so if we can make our way back to that food origins map and we can explore some of these entries. So someone indicated California rolls or avocado. So avocado origins can be found in Central America. And as we're doing this activity with students, we can definitely have the conversation of why certain fruits and vegetables thrive within certain regions, right? So why do certain fruits and vegetables need warmer climates, or why are they found in colder climates, right? So if we're looking at things like the coconut, so the coconut, it can be found all throughout the world, mainly in like tropical coastal regions. And that's partly due to coconuts being able to float on water and how they're dispersed. So they easily disperse through oceans. So that means that coconuts and coconuts trees are found through the coast. So this activity is a really great entry point to many discussions around the Learning Garden. When you initially do this activity, you can further explore conversations around food miles and world trades, around specific world diets and how that influence cultural practices. So it's a really great activity that you can do with younger students or even older students, depending on how you want to build out the activity to fit your classroom. So yeah, so if you have any questions around this activity and more at Big Green at Home, feel free to reach out to the Big Green Chicago team and we can definitely work with you and potentially working with your students virtually. So thank you.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Thanks, everybody. So let's start to wrap up and we'll make sure we leave some good time for questions at the end that we weren't able to get to in the chat. So Big Green virtual support. So obviously it's much more challenging for us to come and work with you all right now and do in-person planting days, in-person activities out in the garden with the young people in your classroom. So we have set up a new kind of like scheduling system so that we can be made available to all of you and support all of your needs. Also, I don't know if you made the connection on our introduction slide, but it is Catherine, Amina, and myself who are the Big Green program team right now. Normally we have a team of, I'd say at least 5 of us here. And so, you know, again, thinking about what's happened in the pandemic and kind of how our team has responded and how Big Green has responded, we are a much slimmer team. And so we want to make sure that we're making ourselves available to all of you. So if you had a program coordinator who was Alana Marder Epstein, who's in this picture here, side note, you will be able to work with Alana as she will be working in CPS central offices supporting all of school gardens starting in April, but not through Big Green. And so we don't want to leave you without a program coordinator or without somebody on our team who can be working directly with you. So we created a Google Calendar appointment system or kind of scheduling system. So if anybody follows this link, starting on the week of April 5th, you will see time slots available every day when you will be able to connect with one of our team members. We ask that if you would like us to join a class, though, please reach out to us first so that we know that we're expecting to join a class, and we can prepare and coordinate with you what exactly activities we will be best suited for you for that virtual session. We really probably would advise that let's start with a meeting with you as an individual or you as your garden team. You can include parents, you can include anybody in the school community looking to be working in the garden, and we can work together to support a plan, and Big Green can help connect some of those dots and bring some resources to the table that and some of just our experience working in school gardens that might not be on anybody's radars. So I put that link in the chat, and we'll be following up with it as well. Again, we're trying to make sure that we're spreading out our resources to support everybody. The other new resource I wanted to point out, and we've been using this throughout the pandemic, but this email address, chicagoprogram@biggreen.org, is if you don't know who to reach out to, if you don't have Catherine or Mina or my email, you're unsure about who to reach out to with a question, just reach out to Chicago Program. That's an email that we're all monitoring, and we'll be able to kind of connect to you and make sure that the right people can respond quickly and support your needs. Another thing, thinking about that scheduling tool, we can support some virtual garden visits so that if you're able to have a good internet signal in the garden and have a video, we can help you identify plants. We can talk about questions related to what's happening directly in the garden, and really try to assess some of those needs as best we can. And then the last thing is this connection to the biggreenathome.org website. Amina just shared this great lesson. This is just one example of some of the lessons we've been hard at work compiling. Lessons and activities that are appropriate for this virtual and hybrid environment that we're working in now. And that website is easily searchable by topic area and also by grade band, so that you can more quickly find the content that you're looking for without having to wade through all of the content at once. Similar to that, I'm sure everybody on this call knows, but our Real Food Lab high school entrepreneurship-based curriculum and Ready, Set, Grow, our K-8 kind of plant science, plant part-based curriculum are all free and available to CPS teachers. We have an online training module set up for that. We also have access to share with you a Drive folder that contains all of the virtual content that we've created associated with those lessons. We also have a Google Classroom set up to support that. The unfortunate thing with the Google Classroom, though, is that we don't have access to inside of the CPS firewall. So you have to access it through a personal email, and it's more difficult to share. It's impossible, I think. We haven't found a way to share it directly with students. So if you want to share it directly with students, it's something you'd have to use the Google Drive to rebuild. Okay, so that is our kind of virtual support world. The last piece, I am going to post some things for evaluation. We are figuring out how to be able to support you all with clock hour credits in this virtual world. So we need to receive your IEIN, your Illinois Educator ID number. I put the link to ISB's website where you can easily find that in the chat. I'm now also pasting into the chat. This is a link to the evaluation. It's again the same typical ISB evaluation that everybody used, and that evaluation can just be filled out on your computer. It can be emailed back to us, and we will compile that and send it off to ISB. And then I'm also going to link one more time this link to the seed form. So in order for us to, getting back to the evaluation and the ISB clock hour credit, in order for us to give you credit, we have to have your IEIN numbers and we have to have the evaluation back. And we're going to use the attendance from this recording to kind of be evidence of completion. Once we have the IEIN numbers and the evaluation, we will email back to you that certificate of completion. And a huge shout out to Healthy Schools Campaign. If you don't know who they are a spectacular organization. They do incredible work organizing parents to support health and wellness initiatives in the schools. We've been working with them on Space to Grow to help build out new incredible schoolyards and support some water, stormwater damage projects within Chicago to help support just our local watershed. So yeah, huge shout out and thank you to Healthy Schools Campaign for supporting this work. And with that, we can open it up to questions. I believe if you have any questions that were not answered in the chat, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll do our best.
Hi, Sam. It's Suzanne O'Shea. How are you guys? We got a new playground, and they took apart our garden and put the pots back. I haven't been back. I'll be back after spring break. How do I go about getting it? You know, the plumbing and soil. I'm not quite sure if there's soil in there or not.
Suzanne, thanks. Why don't definitely once you see the garden and you know what you need, give me a call and we can start working through how we can best support you. The irrigation question, and this is for all of our schools. If you have not been using your irrigation and you would like to, and you notice that some of it is damaged, or you've been using it and you put it back together in the spring and there's all of a sudden a geyser shooting out and you know, you need a repair, that's something that I would please just recommend emailing us. We have a good amount of pieces that, you know, can help repair things if the system is too far gone. Suzanne, it sounds like your garden, it's not existent anymore. We do have a fair amount of the irrigation to replace full systems when that's needed. We don't have an unlimited supply, but definitely enough for the typical season of how many gardens are requesting that kind of support.
Hey Sam, it's Amy from Randolph. There was some really windy weather last fall, and we have a couple of our containers that had some pretty significant soil erosion. How is that something we should just kind of go with it this year, or can we do something about it?
Definitely, this is not the first request we've had for soil, for compost, for fertilizer. Those I think of as, although they're all different, as similar kinds of requests in like the soil world of things. That is the one resource, that's the one family of resources that we just have not been able to fundraise enough for, or like find donations for, and have like our typical, you know, normally every spring we'll have, you know, 15 pallets of soil that we can then work with the schools that have the biggest issues with soil levels and top offs. This year, that's just not available to us. I do have, Big Green does have a really well-written email letter template that we have distributed to many of our schools. If that's something that you'd like, I wonder, Catherine, could you make a note, or Amina, could you make a note that we can include that in our follow-up? Or just reach out to us directly and we'll send you that template. It's been highly successful at taking to big box stores and garden centers. And it's just a template. You print it on your letterhead, you fill in the blanks on a couple things that are like specific for your school. You bring your tax exempt form and you just kind of ask for donations for, you know, 10 bags of soil or whatever it is. That has typically worked exceptionally well. We are going to continue to work really hard to get some soil resources for you all. I just don't have a timeline of when I can offer, for you all to expect that. Note to self, Amy, like for your garden journal, if you have one, like plant a cover crop in the winter, or add mulch in the fall, if you can remember, if in like the rush of the fall before winter comes, to protect that soil and build the soil so that you don't have to deal with erosion, because that is a real problem in our winters for sure. Sorry to hear that that's an issue.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because we actually did have turnips and radishes growing, and the soil just like covered up the plants that were there from one end to the. It was crazy. I think that particular spot gets a lot of headwind, unfortunately. So
I'll hook you up with some cover crop.
Hi, this is Bethany from Ray School, and we have a good amount of kids who may opt to or that are opting to stay remote for the fourth quarter. Are there going to be any options for maybe to do some home planting or some seedlings or something like that at the home? Kind of thing, because I'm going to probably be teaching remote, but I also have access to the school garden, so I'll be doing both. And so I would love to do some gardening with the kids who are opting to do remote learning as well.
Catherine and Marina, do you want to highlight what we're doing with Chicago Grows Food?
Sure, yeah, I can share. So one of the things we did last year now was distribute individual grow kits for students that were remote. So we did that through a partnership with an organization called Chicago Grows Food, with a collaborative. It's a collaborative of a lot of garden and just professionals in that space in Chicago. So they have their own website, chicagogrowsfood.org. And with them, we're hoping to do some more distributions like that in the coming months. But we've also worked with them to develop some like lessons and things like that on the education piece of their page. So that's definitely an option as well. But yeah, we realize it's definitely going to be a challenge for folks that have split classrooms. So some people are remote and some folks in person. So we're just going to do the best we can to help, support everybody. But definitely keep an eye out for the updates from us regarding the Chicago Grows Food and those little grow bag distributions, because those were really popular last year.
Thank you.
Hello, Sam. My name is Anita from Nathan Davis School. Hi. I have a question. Hi, Catherine. How are you? Before the snowstorm that we had, over at Davis, we had all our bins planted up. I mean, we had all our plants out there. But now I know that they're all destroyed now that we had the snowstorm. So, so what do we do from here now? Now, when I go back to my garden, do I pull all those plants out by the roots, or do I just leave them all there now that they're all destroyed now, or so we can plant on for the spring? And also too, I've noticed that we are very, very low on dirt, also on soil. So what do I do? What do I do from there?
Those are really great questions. So first, regarding the snow question, you would, I was surprised this winter at how well the snow is a mulch, right? In the winter, the snow actually protected most of the plants in my garden from the extreme cold that we had after there was snow cover. So that some plants that are more tender that I wouldn't have expected to survive the winter did really well. So I harvested, if you want to find me on Instagram, you'll see some pictures of like a giant harvest of like, adolescent sized carrots that I harvested from my garden in March. And I was expecting them to be mush after kind of freezing and thawing, but because there was so much snow, it kept the soil temperatures fairly stable, and the carrots did great. So I think you probably can expect a lot of plants to still be there. That I think I would just recommend that would be a great example of, we should schedule a virtual garden visit. Bring your phone, turn the camera around and walk through the garden, and we can investigate some of those plants together, and we can help you make some decisions about what plants probably are dead and not coming back and should be pulled out, what things are perennial and might still be coming back to life, and what things maybe had been overwintered, things like kale and things like that, that might still be good to harvest this spring before they bolt and complete their life cycle. So I'd say let's explore that together, and we can help figure out what that looks like. I'd say frequently we always hear stories of people being like, oh, I went out and I cleaned up the garden to get ready to plant, and things that somebody just assumed was a weed was a plant that was intentionally there and is now no longer. So definitely use us as a resource if you have questions like that related to the specific garden. It's hard for me to say without seeing the garden itself. And about soil, most of the gardens, even if they're a good 6 to 8 inches low, visually that does not look good, but there's definitely enough soil for you to grow in.
So as long as it's 8 feet or higher, then it's good to plant, even though, okay.
Yeah, your biggest issue would be if if it's kind of in this range, you're
Right.
okay. You're okay to grow. If it gets really deep, then you're going to maybe have issues with things being shaded
Right.
by the walls, that things that need to get sun won't get sun, and that would
Mhm.
then maybe be an issue.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I have hopefully a quick question. We didn't put the garden to bed in the fall. Also, hello. It's so good to see you all virtually, and some other friends too attending. And so now there's, all these brown stems sticking out of the soil. I'm wondering, should we do like chop and drop, or should we pull it? What's your recommendation?
Catherine, Amina, do you have an idea you want to share?
Sorry, I'm just responding to some folks in the chat. I'm getting a lot of questions. Sorry to interrupt. I'll throw this back to Sam. But if you didn't already send your IEIN number, you can send that to Chicago program at Big Green, as well as the evaluation that we linked. And if you don't care about credit, don't worry about that part. But and folks who have chatted me, I'll just respond to directly as well. Sorry about that interruption.
No worries. Thanks so much for that, Catherine. I always like to leave as much organic matter in the soil and on the soil as you possibly can. If there's just dead, dried leaves and stems, and you can cut them at the base, leave their roots in the soil, the roots will decompose and add more organic matter to the soil, kind of improve soil structure. Everything that's on the surface will protect the soil, keep soil moisture in, protect it from wind, protect it from the sun, basically function as a good mulch. And then just plant, if you need to plant in the soil where there's a bunch of plant debris on the surface, a bunch of mulch, just push it to the side, move it to the side and plant in it. Growing in containers is different than growing in the garden, in the ground, but I think those principles of building organic matter, increasing the carbon in the soil, increasing the food for all the microbes to be eating on, and improving the soil structure are all kind of good strategies, regardless of if you're growing in the ground or in a container. So yeah, unless something was diseased, or if there was a specific problem in that, I would just leave everything right in the garden. Thanks, Monica.
All right, I do want to give folks graceful out because we are way over time. But if you have any extra questions, we're always available via that Chicago programs email. And we will be contacting you via email with all of these resources. Someone suggested we save the chat. I've saved that and we'll send that as well because there's a lot of good info in there. And yeah, thanks so much for joining everyone. Sam, Amin, and I will just stay on maybe until a quarter after the hour just to answer any of these remaining questions coming through the chat. But otherwise, thanks so much for joining. It was so great to see you all. And yeah, happy spring. I'm seeing so many happy springs in the chat, and that's the vibe. So it's so good to see you all.
I just saw a question in the chat. Hey, Charlene, about not being sure if what seeds you need and if you want to pick them up after April 5th. So I'll kind of maybe repeat what something I said earlier is we're filling our orders kind of on first come, first served basis based on the supply that we have. So if we get to April 5th and we filled all our orders and we still have seeds in stock, reach out to us, and we're probably going to close that order form at the end of the day Friday. I think we said Friday by 5 o'clock, just so that Amina and I have time to put together the orders that have come in so that we can get them out to you so that they're there for you on Tuesday. But then if you haven't gotten an order in, send us an email. Let us know you'd like to receive some seeds from us, and we'll do our best with what we have to connect with you and find a way to get you some seeds. Please do your best to get it in by the end of this week though, because it's the three of us and there's 200 gardens and we're doing our best.
Hey Sam, it's Charlene. How are you? So we actually, nobody's really been out to the garden since the summer. We have an engineer that's been out there. And then I think a group of your people came out prior to, or at the end of spring last year, as I recall. So I have to be honest, do not know the condition of the garden at this point. And so until April 5th, I will not be back in the classroom. So that is a big question mark. We have quite a bit of seeds left, or because we've been stockpiling them, the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we can only plant so many in the garden, and then we have so many left. We're doing a plan with our students where we actually bought them little mini gardens. We actually took up a collection, a donation, and we found a little site for growing their own little gardens in egg cartons. And so we are actually getting those to our students that have been, obviously participating in the virtual classroom. So we are actually giving them those when we get back into school. And so we're going to have them start their own gardens and, teach them that they can then, once the little seedlings grow, they can cut apart the egg cartons and put them right into the ground and all, they'll have their own little gardens. So we'll have the students pick those up at school if they're still remote. And if they're not, they'll get them in the classroom and they could actually start them there and leave them there if that's what they want to do. So it's really cute. It just, I can give you the website, but they will give 50% off to teachers, a one-time 50% off of any of their items. They have these little gardens, and then they also do like natural rubs and things like that you could buy. So if anyone's interested, I'll send you that website. You just have to request it and let them know you're a teacher, and they'll give you 50% off all their stuff. So, so I'm not really sure what condition our garden is, although we continue to, try to, promote it. So can you just put me seeds together, what you think would be good to put in the garden? And then if I have extra, we'll just have more. Because
it sounds like if you have a good amount of seeds left over from previous years, and are these kits that you're getting, do those come with seeds as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so my hunch would be probably there's a good amount that you already have that will grow just fine.
Okay, I shouldn't have
and
to
then
worry about them.
you shouldn't. And then, if take a look at the link of what Big Green has available. And if you want to grow cucumbers, just like select like the 3 or 4 things that you want to grow, and we'll have them ready for you to pick up over the spring break weekend at at the northwest or south side, whichever is convenient for you.
Okay.
And then down a month from now, 2 months from now, as you start figuring things out more and you're like, oh my God, I forgot about this, like I wish I had carrots or whatever it is, let us know, and then we can try to fill in the blanks for you.
Okay, will do. I mean, we've had some really, the kids, we always do like in the spring, lots of calendar things, and we do a lot of cooking in the classroom, although we won't be doing the cooking in the classroom, but we will be sharing the recipes with the kids. So yeah, okay, sounds good. Maybe we can harvest and have them take it home and make their recipes at home.
Yeah,
We'll
that
figure
sounds
something.
great.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I am going to end the meeting. But I love the enthusiasm and the energy, and yeah, feel free to reach out to us via email if you have follow-up questions. But thanks again for joining us. It's really great to see you all.